The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Shane and I am delighted to be joined by Jethro Sagers, who will be talking to you about protecting your Office 365 data with the Microsoft Information Protection. Remember to join in the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is ESPC18. Want to get the best price ticket for attending ESPC 18? The Super Early Bird offer closes on May 7th. See sharepointeurope.com/pricing for full details. After the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you have for Jethro in the questions window. Some questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and you will be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass you over to our webinar presenter, Jethro Sagers. Hello, Jethro.
Good morning, Shane. How are you?
I'm super. I'm just going to pass control over to you now, so take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all for joining. Today in this session, we're going to talk about Microsoft Information Protection, and more specifically, how you can protect your Office 365 data using Microsoft Information Protection. So let's take a look at today's agenda. I'm going to very quickly introduce myself, making sure that you know who I am and what I do. And then we're going to talk about Microsoft Information Protection and Azure Information Protection and how they relate towards each other. I really love demos. I really think demos are the way to go. So we're going to show you immediately how Azure Information Protection and Microsoft Information Protection, how it works for the end user. We're also going to go in depth in how do you set it up, what do you need, how do you configure it, what are policies, etc. And then finally, we're going to look how you can integrate Microsoft Information Protection and Azure Information Protection with Office 365. And like Shane already said, we will end this session with Q&A. So if you have questions for me, make sure to do so in the Q&A section. A little bit by myself. My name is Jethro Sagers. I'm the program director at SkySync. SkySync is a company based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm personally from Belgium, made a move about 5 years ago to Seattle. So fellow European, have both sides of the Atlantic under my belt right now. But at SkySync, I'm responsible for technical evangelism and product marketing. I've been spending about 15 years, even a little bit more now, in consultancy, development, marketing, product management. And I was an Office 365 MVP from 2012 till 2017. I like to do conferences, webinars, all stuff like this, everything related to Azure, Office 365, and cloud services. If you want to follow me on Twitter, absolutely do so. My handle is @Yesayers. And if you want to follow the company and see what we do, we have a Twitter handle as well, and that's @SkySync. If you want to reach out to me, absolutely do so. I have no problem with people reaching out to me through my email address. That is yesayers@skysync.com. So let's get in there. So I always like to start with why is Azure Information Protection such an important thing. And I also want to pretty much grab back to what Gartner was saying about 2 years ago, and they predicted for 2019, which is next year, that a multi-cloud strategy will become the common strategy for 70% of enterprises by 2019. And I want to focus on one specific word, and it says multi-cloud. So we're not talking about a hybrid environment, we're actually talking about a multi-cloud environment. So that means that if you have an organization, it's totally possible that you will have Office 365. It's totally possible that you will have Box, Dropbox, even sometimes on-prem like file servers, maybe a legacy ECM depending on what you're trying to do. And that's kind of where Azure Information Protection and Microsoft Information Protection tries to get protection involved, is really in that multi-cloud / hybrid environment. So if you look at how companies are built, you're going to see a lot that there's content silos, right? You have cloud services, you have SharePoint, you have Office 365, you have ECM platforms, you have line of business applications. And in most cases, all these different applications stand on their own. They have their own storage, they have their own logic, they have their own rules, potentially their own governance. What we're seeing a lot, and again, that's where Microsoft Information Protection comes in as well, is that there's an inconsistency over these different content services. Protection is difficult. You need to protect all your different systems. There's a lot of time and overhead. If you need to implement security in all these different systems, what you're going to see is that potentially you're going to forget certain security rules. There's no universal reporting. You don't really know what is going on if you have all these different systems that are not connected with each other. Think about a business impact. If you have all these different softwares to manage and control all these different content silos, that is going to increase the amount of software that you need for that. Plus also the ongoing cost is really, really difficult. Internal support is going to be high, and really a problem is the increased risk of data loss. And if we're thinking today what we have with GDPR and other compliances, even in the US, that is something that we can't afford today anymore. So going back to what the whole problem statement why Microsoft Information Protection has been created, or why Azure Information Protection has been created. These are a few statements. Our primary challenge with information protection: we don't know what information we have, where it's stored, and how it's used. We use 900 different cloud services. We can't identify what information is stored on these services and what should be protected. Our confidential data has customer records and should be stored in the cloud. We want to know this data and protect it. And that brings us pretty much why information protection is such a challenge, is organizations are no longer confident in their ability to detect, and even worse, they're not really sure how to prevent data theft. Again, reaching back to what GDPR and stuff is doing, that is super important. It's not just, hey, what do you have, but also how do you protect it? And going back to all the different things that we just talked about, that multi-cloud environment, that multi-structure environment is really becoming a problem. Also, intellectual property theft has increased over 56%, which is huge. Accidental or malicious breaches due to lack of internal controls, we know that over 91% of breaches could have been avoided. And saving files to non-approved cloud storage apps is common. And think about the whole story of shadow IT. It is so easy nowadays to actually spin up a new cloud service, put on your data, and that's just how things work nowadays, right? If we want to put a number on it, about 80% of employees admit, and that doesn't even include all the people that don't want to admit, but they admit not or using non-approved SaaS applications. So that whole thing, that whole premise actually leads, how do we protect our data? And if we look back on how we used to do, we could actually say this. In the old days, between air quotes, we actually had on-premises, right? Our data was stored on our file servers. You already needed to have a VPN to dial in, stuff like that. So really pretty secure. Then we had pretty much the bring your own device boom. Suddenly, we needed to have a way to protect our devices, and even more important, how to protect the content on these different devices. Now, with cloud with shadow IT, it becomes even more complex how to protect your data from not being data breached, from not being lost in your environment. So when we look at it, when we look at a data-centric lifecycle protection, it all starts with classify, right? And that's the first thing that we're going to do when we talk about Microsoft Information Protection as well, is how do you classify data, right? Classify data should be done when data is created, both manually or automatic. I think people should have the opportunity to define themselves or to define for themselves what type of information that they have in their documents, but also you need to provide some help to them that scans the document, says, hey, I've seen that you have like credit card numbers in this document. You're not classifying this as financial. We think you should do this. So it's more of a suggestion. And then you have the hardcore automatic classification where you're like, no, I see 4 credit card numbers. There's no choice for you. We are going to classify this as highly confidential. Attached to that is the labels, and what we want to see are persistent labels, right? Labels that when the document moves from system to system, that the labels move with that document. It needs to be an industry standard and that enables a wide ecosystem. And what we mean by that is what you're going to see is that with Microsoft Information Protection, it is not bound to just the Microsoft ecosystem, right? It's if you want to use Microsoft Information Protection and Azure Information Protection, you're going to see that it's not just Office 365 or a file server on Windows Server. You're going to see that it is available in Google Drive, that you can enable this in Box, in legacy ECMs like Documentum and OpenText. Additionally, we also want to make sure that people are aware of the classification, just visual classification, like for example, headers, footers, watermarks. That's the stuff we're going to add to the documents to make sure that people have some kind of education attached to it so they are aware of that sensitive information is in that document. And then, of course, how to protect. And there's multiple ways, right? In this session, we're going to focus a lot on the encryption with RMS. But you can also, I will also give a few examples on how you can use the labeling and classifying from an Azure and Microsoft Information Protection in data loss prevention, for example. How do these things work together? And control over data, I'm also going to show you how you can use, for example, the SharePoint search to find data that is stored in your Office 365 with specific labels and tags that are created by Microsoft Information Protection. And of course, this all works through a policy, enforcement, and automation service that runs through these three. So, when we look at the story of a file, and after that we will actually jump immediately into demos. When a file is created, there's multiple sources where that file can come from. The user is going to open that file or use Word or Excel or Microsoft Office in general to actually edit that file. Then it will be tagged, then it will be labeled. User will upload that to SharePoint Online, for example, for internal sharing or with Microsoft Teams, with Microsoft Teams being on the rise. Another user in the group uses that file, shares it to Box. So that's the whole story that we want to tell, and how does that protection work, and how does it feel like. So we're going to split up the demo in 4 pieces. So we're going to talk first about the end user experience, then we're going to show you how the admin works and how the admin can control what type of policies are set and the definitions of these policies. The third part is about usage and tracking. How can you see where your document is being shared, if your document left your organization, what part of the world is your document kind of going towards, but also who has been trying to open your document and did they have permissions, yes or no. And then, of course, the integration with Office 365. We're going to see how Microsoft Information Protection works on Exchange, but also on SharePoint Online and OneDrive. Okay, so let's go into our demo. So I have 3 virtual machines right here. They're all Windows 10's environment. I have 3 users. I have Alexa, I have Jethro and myself, and then I have Katie. Alexa and myself, we're actually in the financial team. We deal with all the financial data in our organization, and Katie is somebody from our marketing team that we collaborate with every now and then. But what you're going to see first is I created a group, and I'm going to my Office 365 Admin Center here. I have a group finance team that is a mail-enabled security group, and that is important. You're going to see in a bit when we start doing the whole configuration that Azure Information Protection and Microsoft Information Protection needs a mail-enabled security group to actually make it work. Okay, so let's go into Alexa, and Alexa is going to create a document for us. So let's start with a new document. There we go. And I'm just going to copy this one. This is a demo credit card number. It's not a real, so if you wanted to use it, it won't work. But it does help you if you want to test Azure Information Protection if you needed a credit card number. So first things first, what you're going to see here is this Microsoft Information Protection bar. And you're immediately going to see that I've created a policy with 2 labels: financial highly confidential and financial confidential, right? You also have here this button, which is the Microsoft Information Protect button, and you will actually see the same here, same type of things. You also have here to track and revoke, which we're going to discuss in a bit, but pretty much what we're going to do is we want here to put this in there, right? And you see immediately I get financial confidential already tagged. I can now save this. Let's just save it on my desktop for now. And immediately it says, hey, it's recommended to tag this as financial confidential. And this is, for example, what I was talking about around the end user education. Now we can actually say, hey, change this. And immediately you're going to see that it gets a big watermark. Again, we were talking about how do we make sure that people are educated, that they know this contains confidential information. So now I have all this information available. I'm going to save it again. So now it's tagged. Let's do the same, but instead of just one, let's just do this, have that credit card number a few times in there, right? Okay, so let's save this again on my desktop. And now it's going to say, hey, it's recommended to label this file as highly confidential. So based on the number of sensitive information, and in this case credit cards, it's going to be different what type of recommendation Microsoft Information Protection is going to give you. So I'm going to say, yep, change this now. There we go. You see there's a different watermark, but what's also very important is now here in the protection is that it is protected. Right? So this, because it's highly confidential, I added a protection to it. So now the document is encrypted. And what we're going to be doing now is we're going to start sharing this out. And like I said, this is not just attached to the Microsoft ecosystem. And to prove that point, what we're going to do is save these 2 documents on my box environment, right? So I'm going to log in here on my box. And my 2 other users, Alexa and, Jethro, Alexa, and Katie, have access to this box account. So they all have access to this specific document. So I'm going to create a new folder. Go to my desktop. Okay, so this document is available now on my box. So let's go first. So I was with Alexa. Let's go with Jethro. So Jethro is a part of that same team. And let's see what happens. So I go to the AIP demo. Let's take the one that was protected. I'm going to, first of all, when you open it up, you're going to see that the preview is not available, right? That is just because the whole encryption does not work with Box. So Box can't decrypt the document and therefore cannot really preview the content. Let's download this. Let's put it on my desktop. Okay, so now what you're going to see that it is immediately labeled, so it does show me that same label. It is restricted access, so now Jethro knows that there are specific permissions around it. And of course, like with every document you download from the internet, we're just going to say, hey, let's just keep it in protected view right now. But I didn't have to provide a username or password, right? That just automatically authenticated me with Azure Information Protection. And Jethro can open this. And why can Jethro open this is because he's a member of that financial team. Now, Katie is not. So if we go to Katie's environment and do the same thing, if all goes well, so she has permissions to this document to download it because she has access to the Box environment. But because we've protected it, she should not have access. So it says, hey, you need to log in. And once you get this screen, this is already an indication that the account that you logged in with in Office does not have permissions. If I just say tick this one, it's going to say you're not signed in with into Office with an account that has permissions to open this document. So even though it doesn't come from the Microsoft ecosystem, it comes from Box, that protection follows Office or follows that document around, not just the permissions or the protection, but also the label. So you saw that Jethro and Alexa easily can do that or see what is going on with the document and see what is in the document, while Katie, who is not a part of that team, cannot, right? If we download for Katie that second document that doesn't have protection, and you see here already that the preview now does work just because there is no protection attached to it. So I can save this, open this, and you're going to see without a problem that Word is going to be able to open this and give you the same labels here. Now, how does this work? What do you need to make this work? And we're not going immediately into the admin side. I'm really mean on the end user side. Of course, you need Office, right? Office Pro Plus, best way to go. I think it's supported starting at Office 2010. But you also need to plug in. I know there's versions already out there where the plugin by default is enabled. In my experience, doesn't work 100%, so I still like to install the plugin. And actually, when you open Word, and if you have a good site, you will actually see that it says loading in the plugin. Oh, it's too fast. But that is important. It's that plugin that you need. And Microsoft even provides an MSI that you can just over your environment deploys it. It is that plugin that will communicate back to Microsoft Information Protection and really have that setup and communication between what do I need to tag, how do I label it, stuff like that. Okay, so that's the end user side. Let's go into the admin side. So I'm going to my Jethro environment, who is the admin. And the way to do this is really go into your Azure portal. There you go. And in the Azure portal, it's actually called Azure Information Protection. Now, to have this available, you need to have the Azure Information Protection licensing. By default, it's a part of E5. You can also have it separately by getting the Azure Information Protection licensing. You can just, if you have, let's say, an E1 or another type of license, you can actually bundle on top of it, but you need a separate license or you need a license pack where this is actually included. When you get this, you can actually just go into your Azure Information Protection, and what you're going to see is that you have two types of policies. You have the global policy and you have the scoped policy. Scoped policy is very easy. Scope policy is a policy that is created by Azure Information Protection for a subset of users. So for example, if I wanted to create a subset for, let's say, my financial team, what I would do here is just create a new policy, select the users, and I can either select the users separately or say, hey, take my financial team. Okay, let's give this a name. This is policy financial. Policy for the financial team. And you're going to see immediately that the labels that I've created for my global policy will be available, right? So the global policy is for everyone. The scope policy will be a policy that overrides the global policy depending on your users. So I can create here a new label. And I can actually call this, for example, top secret. And this is the top secret label for financial team. And now you can start customizing this, right? Let's start first with the color. It needs to be in the bar. So I'm going to make this, for example, white. I will come back to this part. This is really to protect it. But now you have the visual markings. Like we said in the beginning, it's very important that you're going to show some visualization of the labels or the content or the sensitive information in that document so people are aware that they're dealing with sensitive information. So we're going to give it a header, and you can define this header as top secret. This contains financial information. You can customize this, you can change the color, you can say that needs to be centered, and you can do the same for footer. So I'm just going to copy that. Here we go. And then watermark, top secret, again, diagonal. And now we're going to define the conditions, right? How or what conditions need to be met if we want to protect this. And right now what you're going to see is there's a number of industries. So we have financials, medical, health, privacy, etc. And now I can select, unfortunately, only one. So if I would go here for credit card number, right, I can get that. Now, going back to what is going on in Europe with GDPR, you're going to see that if you want to do it this way, you need to cover like labels for all these different conditions. So here you can add multiple conditions, but you need to do it one by one. That is cumbersome, right? Let's be honest. There's so many things you need to control with GDPR. Now, the good news is during the GDPR Partner Summit last month, Microsoft announced that they will have a sensitive data set available for Office 365, but also for Azure Information Protection that contains everything. So it would be as easy as selecting the GDPR sensitive data definition, and everything under the GDPR regulation would be covered in here. Okay, let's do credit card number because that's the easiest to control. Let's do a minimum number of occurrences. So in this case, let's say we do 6. So if there's 6 credit card numbers, highly confidential was 2, top secret is 6. And then you can say, do you want to count unique values only? No. Any type, even if it's 6 copies of the same credit card number, still want to apply this. Okay, save this. Add policy tip. Again, this is for education purposes. So in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, even in Outlook, this policy tip will be provided. And then you can add some notes. Okay, so let's go back to the protection. And now you can actually say, okay, I want to protect this. So I'm going to protect it with my Azure RMS. I can also choose, if I wanted to do so, remove the protection, which in my case doesn't really make sense. So what I'm going to do now is actually set the permissions, right? So I can change here or set permissions, set user-defined permissions, or predefined template out of Azure RMS. In my case, I'm going to add permissions again to my financial team. So browse here, my directory, finance team, select. And now you can define what is going on, right? What do they need to do? I want them to set to reviewer, meaning that they can't print, can't copy, can't change rights, etc. So, okay. If you want to customize this, you can customize this completely. So that's completely up to your choice. Content expiration. How long is this content going to be around? You can actually say it's never going to expire. It's just a working document. I want this to be forever, by date or by day. So if you only want this document to be available for 7 days, that's totally fine. You can totally do that. Just select by days and then say, okay, let's for the next 7 days, and after that it just gets expired and the document won't be available anymore. Also, offline access. So as you know, for the protection, it's going to communicate back, or the plugin within Word is going to communicate back to Azure Information Protection. Are you going to allow that by offline access as well? Can, for example, the permissions be cached? That's pretty much what is going on here. Again, you can say by date. I'm going to say never. So I always need to be online pretty much to have this document. Okay, so protection is set as well. I'm going to save this. It's here at the top. And now you're going to see that I have here my label available. There we go. And now you would think, yeah, I'm done. It's good to go. No. If you go back to the previous screen, you will see you need to publish to deploy changes to all users. Very important. If you don't publish them, they won't be available. And then you can try all you want, but it's not going to be visible. So, okay. So this is the admin side. We've got that completely covered now. Let's go back into our Word and see. Let's see first who I'm logged in as. Okay, perfect. Let's go into Word. And you see now here for Jethro, I have top secret, right? So now I can actually just label this top secret. Oh, it needs a few more minutes to get through. But in the meantime, I can go to my Katie environment and see normally if the scope worked the way that it's supposed to work, she should not see that top secret. And she doesn't. So again, you can actually build your policies how you want it to be, right? You can configure it. You can say, hey, I want for this team this to happen, this to happen, this to happen. So the cool thing is you have your global policy, and the global policy is your base policy, really applies to everyone in your organization. And then you can create scope policies that are pretty much on top of the global policy. Okay. So let's go back to Alexa, who created that document, that financial many document. So let's open that again. Sorry, there we go. Close that. Open my Word. And in this scenario, we're actually going to cover the situation where the document has been spread out way too far. And Alexa wants to know where is my document, who has been accessing my document, and potentially if the situation needed to revoke it. So what we're going to do here, we're going to use a track and revoke. So what we're going to have here is now our tracking mechanism. Here, what you see is the views, who is denied, the minutes since last activities, and let's go into that. So the denied is going to show me pretty much what you're going to see here is who has viewed and who has denied. So in this case, Katie Snyder, who is the person who is not in the finance team, is pretty much here, sees that it is denied. In this case, we're going to see that Jethro is did have access and he viewed a document and when it was viewed. I can look at the timeline here and really see like what was going on, who has viewed, when, who was denied, when, and get all that information. I can even see this on a map, right? This is not 100%, doesn't always give you the right information here, unfortunately, but it does provide you some insight specifically from what is going on. If for some reason you don't want a document to be out there anymore, what I can do now here is revoke access and pretty much confirm, and that will take away all the permissions, and even people who had access won't have access anymore to that specific document. So with this tracking portal, it's not 100% there yet. In full transparency, I had it to work for one specific user. For other users, it sometimes gives a problem with licensing. Like you've seen, the timeline in the map is sometimes a bit off, so that's important to understand as well. So I do expect a lot of improvements on this case because that's one of the features with Microsoft Information Protection that I like a lot, and see it right here. Okay, so that's the tracking port. And now let's see how this fully integrates with Office 365 like Exchange, SharePoint Online. So again, what we're going to be doing is we're going to upload documents and send documents through Exchange. So I'm going to use my Outlook here. Alexa, stop. So I have my Outlook here. What I'm going to do is now send an email to Jethro. I'm going to include that document. And what you're going to see as well is I can actually make this email confidential as well. I'm just going to label it for now. I already have the information here, but if I send this to Jethro, and let's go into Jethro's Outlook version. Here we go. So now here, you're going to see immediately that the email is labeled with the right tag. And here that document is available as well. You're going to see in one of my previous tests that there is an email with like a stop or a forbidden sign on it. That's actually an email that has permissions attached to it, right? So that's very important here to understand is this is a non-protected email, but with a protected document in there. So I can just open it again. Now what is very important is when I forward this forward to my Katie account and send this, Katie will be able to read the email. Let's open Katie's Outlook. Let's do that real quick. And again, here in this email, she will be able to read this, but when I open this document, it will have the same effect as just the sharing information that we had out of box, right? Okay, so that's one scenario. The second scenario is, what if we protect the email itself? So again, sending an email to Jethro, let's add a document. But now we're going to choose a setting with protection, right? So I'm sending that email, send anyways. There we go. Now go to my Jethro environment. Let's wait until the email comes in. There we go. You see immediately that it is a restricted email, but immediately I can read it, what's in there. I can open the document because I have permissions to do so. So it's really natively integrated with Outlook that no matter what, even if you protect your email and you do have permissions, you're good to go. However, if I'm going to forward this to my Katie environment, and here's Katie's email. Let's wait until the email comes in. There we go. Again, you can see it is a protected email, but she can't even read the email itself because it is protected with whatever permissions you've defined for that email. So it cannot be viewed in the reading pane until you verify. So if we double click on the message, we need to give our credentials. And again, like what we had with Word, now we see that we're signed in with an account that doesn't have permissions. Okay, cool. So that's the email side. I also want to put a little bit of insights in the way that you can use this with SharePoint Online. So what I have is I've uploaded this document, right, on my SharePoint environment. So let's just go to my SharePoint. I have just a basic SharePoint setup. I don't need the admin. I need a regular one. There we go. If I try to open this document, right, I get all that information. Same, all the tagging is there. But now what would be cool is really to see if I can find all the documents that have a specific tag attached to it. So how does it look like? For example, I actually looked in this search query, and I'm going to show you in a bit how you can configure this. This is a search query that says, hey, look for the sensitivity alias, and that's just a managed property that I've defined in my search schema, and find me everything that has in some way, shape, or form financial tags attached to it. And you can actually see here all the information. You're going to see that some are protected. So again, even in SharePoint Online, if it's protected, you won't see a preview. Again, it's because SharePoint Online does not know how to break open that encryption, and kind of is important to make that protection as stable as possible. So again, you can search this. How does it work? It's actually very easy to do so. You can pretty much do it in 5 minutes. You go to your admin center. You go to your SharePoint admin center. Sorry. You go into your search. Very important, like with everything in SharePoint Online search, you need to make sure there's at least one document available that kind of have that property so that the crawler can actually pick that property up. So you go into your managed schema, you go to crawled properties, and look for sensitivity. And here, this is the tag when you upload a document with an AIP label, that will be crawled. The only thing that hasn't happened yet at that point is you haven't created it into a managed property, and that is crucial if you want to start working on it. So pretty much what I've done is I have a mapping from sensitivity to refinable string 00. And what I've also done is, because I like the whole alias thing with managed properties, if you go to search for refinable string, you're going to see here, when I open this up, then now you have refinable string 00, and here you have, of course, the configuration, but also sensitive alias. And I used actually this to search for my information. So here, sensitive alias, asterisk financial, allows me pretty much to capture all the documents that have a financial tag on it. Whatever your tag is, right? If you have something like, if I would do here, if I would have a document top secret, I could just say, okay, give me sensitive alias top secret. It won't find anything because it wasn't uploaded, but that's pretty much how it works. Now, why is that important? Because right now, if you have that managed property available, pretty much you can say now, oh, because I have that managed property available, I can start including this in my policy tips and in my DLP, right? So one of the things you could do is create a data loss prevention policy that says, hey, if this label is attached to it, do not allow this to be shared with external. So suddenly it's not like, hey, I'm just going to protect it on the document itself, but you can actually use Microsoft Information Protection pretty much to say, okay, I'm going to protect it, but I'm also going to include it in a data loss prevention policy, so I don't even have to worry that people accidentally are going to share that document, right? So that is very important. So again, very easy to do so. You pretty much go in your crawl properties, you put it on a managed property, and you're good to go. So that is very important. Okay, so that concludes the demo. Let's go back to the presentation itself. So let me give you some resources. Again, if you want to follow me, do so. SkySync is the corporate Twitter handle. Yesayers is my handle. For all the emails, please send out to yesayers@skysync.com. Also, our website is available. My personal blog is on there as well. There's a lot of videos. I have YouTube videos. And I also try to make everything publicly available around Microsoft in general. So again, based on everything that is going on with GDPR, with protection, with the need of people to actually protect their data over a multi-cloud environment, over a hybrid environment, in my opinion, Microsoft Information Protection is really the way to go. And it does help you in identify where's my classic or my classified information, where is my sensitive information. Provide end user education by using the tooltips, by using the bar, by using the watermarks. On top of that, protect it with Azure Rights Management so that there's a security involved. And as you can see, it doesn't only work with documents, with content, it also works with email. And you can have that whole protection all over Office 365. The only thing you need to do is make sure that you're using Office Pro Plus or a supported version of Office. FYI, it also works in Office for Mac, very important. You need to have that plugin available, so that is also available. Like I said, they are starting to integrate everything, but if you don't have the integrated version, please install the plugin. And then it's just a matter of having the licenses and defining the policies. Think your policies through. You can actually go through it and really define them really, really cool on your own way. So that's pretty much the way that Microsoft Information Protection works, and specifically towards Office 365. So Shane, I'm going to open up for Q&A. Let me see. I don't know if you have been following the questions, or if there's specific questions already in the chat.
Sure, Jethro. Thanks for a great presentation. Yeah, we have some questions, and should you wish to ask a question, type it into the questions window. Okay, first question, Jethro. Does this help me in my GDPR story?
So yes and no. So it does. It's not a tool that will make you GDPR compliant. There's not a single technology out there that will do that for you. But one of the crucial things that is a part of GDPR is classifying your data, identifying what sensitive information you have in your organization, and also finding it, right, and protecting it. Of course, the whole data breach protection that you need. It will help you. It still means that you have to focus on people and processes to get it in place, but for me it's a really low hanging fruit to implement in your organization if you're worried about GDPR. Like I said, it's not going to fix it. Like I said, there's not a single technology that can do that, but it does allow you to set up rules, and it does allow you to classify, it does allow you to protect. So even if a document leaves the company, the organization, you know it's protected with one of the best protections out there. The tracking portal allows you to see where that document has been or is, and who has been trying to access it. So it really gives you insights in a lot of stuff that is necessary to be GDPR compliant, but it's just a part of it.
Sure. Okay, next question. What are the licensing implications of this?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's multiple options. So E5, it's a very expensive one, but it does include it. And then if you're not willing to go for the E5 route, you can actually take it separately. So you can actually have just an E3 with an Azure Information Protection licensing on top, or even an E1 if you would go that way. But you can actually mix and match as it's necessary for your organization, right?
Okay. Next question. Can I do this in an automated way from my data already stored in Office 365?
Yes and no. And I hate giving that answer. Yes, you're going to see there's a scanner actually for file servers on-prem, and I think it's also supported for SharePoint on-prem. Unfortunately, that is not the case for SharePoint Online. However, Microsoft does have a tool, the Cloud Apps Security Broker, that has an integration with AIP. So the way that it works is you can actually, with your Cloud Apps Security Broker, you can point it to your Office 365 box. I think Google Drive is also supported. Dropbox is supported. And when they find classified information, they can actually tag the label and the protection to it. Unfortunately, it's not a free tool. So if you want to do that way, there's an additional licensing involved. But that's about it. So it's free for on-prem, file server, SharePoint on-prem. It's not free. You need the CAS broker tool to do that.
Okay. When I upload a protected document to SharePoint, does the full text search work?
No, because again, if you've seen with the preview, you're actually going to, the protection encrypts it, so it can't really deal with that full text.
Great. Jethro, that is it for the questions. Thank you so much for taking the time to make this contribution to the community today. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved it. So again, if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can go follow me on Twitter, or even send me an email. I love to get on a chat with you guys if you needed to. But yeah, thank you so much for having me, and it was really, really fun.
Thank you. Thank you, Jethro.
Thank you all.
Muted.
Okay, everybody. That is all for today. See SharePointEurope.com/register-for-webinars for further details on all upcoming webinars. Thank you all for attending, and have a great day.